Hey girls, Tiffany Dawn here, and welcome back to some more girl talk. And I've got something a little different for you all today. This is February, which is Black History Month. So I grew up in a very homogenous world. I was homeschooled, I was in this smallish Christian church, and most of my friends growing up were also white. And I had no idea that prejudice was still a thing. Like, I honestly thought racism was gone and over, and I just thought that everybody I knew was so nice. So how could people be racist? And it wasn't until I had my first job that I realized that there were some real issues with racism in our country still. And then I started realizing two things. First, that the same people who are so nice to me can turn around and show a mean streak to people who are different from themselves. And I also noticed that I too have bias and prejudice in my own heart without even realizing it. It's something that we so often grow up with, so it's very subconscious, but we can be very prejudiced against people who are different from ourselves. Here's one of many, many examples. This one I got to kind of experience with somebody in a sense. I'd taken these two sisters who are Black teen girls shopping, and we're at the mall, we all have our Starbucks cups. I go to check out, and the girl who's checking me out at the register, I was like, can you take my Starbucks cup and just throw it out? And she's like, sure. So she takes my cup and throws it out. And then both the girls I'm with are like, oh, can you take ours too? And she kind of looks at them and she's like, are they empty? And the girls were like, oh no. And she's like, I can't take them then. And it was one of those things where I was like, something doesn't feel right here, but I don't know what it is. And honestly, I didn't catch on fast enough. It just felt weird to me. And then a few hours later, I realized like, oh my gosh, she never asked me if my cup was empty, but she asked them if theirs were. Like, she's treating us differently based on what we look like. But that moment for me was eye-opening because it was like, oh, people are not all treated the same. I've started to realize like there really is an issue in our culture, and I just haven't seen it because I've been stuck in my own white girl box that's really comfortable for me, and it can be really uncomfortable to get out of our own box. And so I started becoming more aware of prejudice and the way that it is affecting people in our culture and our world. And I became almost paralyzed. Like, I felt like I couldn't talk with people who were Black or African American because I felt like something I was gonna say would offend them. So I'd be hanging out with people who were of another ethnicity, and I would just like totally like become awkward and like weird and paralyzed and feeling like I can't be friends with them. I don't know how to act around them. Like, what if I hurt them? And really worrying a lot more than I had to. Recently, I've realized like I really need to work through this. How do I interact with people? How do I help this Black Lives Matters movement? Like, what can I do as a white girl to help make this world a better place? And so I want to share with you some questions that I asked of a couple of friends of mine, and then I'm going to come back on and kind of wrap this all up. So check this out. And today I am with two of my friends. This is Kai and this is Imani, and we are going to talk with you today in honor of Black History Month. We're going to talk about hashtag Black Lives Matter. So then I started working at a college, and that's when I started to learn. My boss was African American from the South, and she was about to retire. As she shared with her stories and her experiences with racism and prejudice, it really hit home for me that this was a very real thing, but it also kind of felt like it paralyzed me. Like, I all of a sudden was so afraid that I was going to say something that would offend somebody. I almost wanted to just avoid the whole topic of race.
Yeah, I just feel like the topic shouldn't be avoided because like not addressing the issue is kind of like saying there isn't a problem.
Yeah.
And that's not something that personally I'm okay with. Like, you need to talk about it, but also just establish that when you're having the conversation, make sure that people understand that you're not trying to be offensive in any type of way, like in case you do say something, and make sure that you're with someone that you trust enough to be able to have a completely open conversation so you can acknowledge biases.
So you're saying like get together with somebody who is of another culture or who is Black and talk with them and say, help me to understand this.
Right. Because of how America is in general, I would say, bias is something that is very established but not recognized. People don't think about their bias unless it comes up until it's offending someone, I guess, which is really sad.
If you're gonna have that conversation, which I think you absolutely should, you have to like let your person just talk. Like, don't feel like you have to say anything, don't feel like you have to defend yourself, don't feel like you have to defend other people. It's just, that's our perspective. Yeah. Respect our perspective, and we respect your perspective. But for those who are fearful of having that conversation, just know you are not protecting us, you're protecting yourself. Because for me, at least, it's something I would love to talk about it, but I know people are like, oh, I don't want to be offensive, but that's really, you're afraid of making yourself feel awkward. And this is an awkward conversation, and there's no question about it, but who are you really trying to protect? Are you trying to protect the other person or trying to protect yourself?
That's so true. Okay, so one of my questions for you guys is, I've heard that it's more politically correct to say that somebody is black as opposed to African American, but I feel super weird saying that somebody is black because then I feel like I'm just paying attention to like what they look like on the outside. So I don't know. I don't know. What am I supposed to say?
I cannot speak for the entire African American community. I'm just gonna throw that as right out there. But I personally don't like the term African American because I'm not from Africa.
Yeah.
I have white people that are my friends who are actually from Africa, thus I would call them African Americans.
That's awesome.
I am American. Honestly, I don't feel like I need to be differentiated by my color. Just, I'm an American. Sometimes I'm proud of that, sometimes I'm not. But I am American. But if you're gonna call me something, I'm black. That's not, I don't find offense to that. But other people who may have fought for the right to be called African American or something, they might take offense to that. So it's neither here nor there. I don't know. I like the term black, and I know a lot of people think that people that say African American are trying to be overly sensitive to it. So, but that's just my personal.
Also, the other thing for me, which I guess this just goes for everything that is ever said, your tone behind it. Like, if you're doing like, oh, he's black. Like, what? Like, what is that? Okay?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like,
Right?
labels or
Millennials and
whatever.
labels.
It doesn't, I'm a person. I'm Imani. You can call me Imani. That's all you really need to do.
So my next question is, sometimes people will like make jokes and they try to like make jokes equally for like all different people. Like they'll tease one person because they're Asian, one person because they're black, one person because they're skinny or whatever. And they like are doing it to try and be funny. And they're really not trying to be mean, but like, is that actually like okay?
Personally, I feel like you shouldn't judge and or make fun of people because of something that they can't change. Like, you can't change the fact that you're black. You can joke about other things. We don't have to joke about the way people look.
I'm very laid back. So, like if it's, Chris Rock or something, or like Kevin Hart or somebody, like a famous comedian making fun, I guess, I think it's funny. I think it depends on who's making the joke and like the caliber of the joke. And if it's based off of a stereotype, and if like I've known you for a long time or whatever, that's cool. But some of my friends who I've known for a very long time, I tell them that's not that joke is not funny. Like if it's based off of a stereotype or something that it's like clearly not true, like, oh, black people like fried chicken. Everybody likes fried chicken.
Unless you're vegan.
Unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian or gluten-free. Everybody likes fried chicken. So I don't like when people make those generalizations like, oh, black people like fried chicken. Because it's like, everyone likes fried chicken. That's not funny. I love fried chicken because it's delicious. But I don't like watermelon. And that's also another generalization. Like, oh, black people love watermelon. I don't like watermelon. I think it's gross.
What's the other one? Grape soda?
And I don't know.
Grape soda's nasty. Okay? Like, that's not...
Nobody likes that.
Sorry. I'm not.
Either way, but I digress. And, if it was just like, I was the only black person in a room full of white people and they were making jokes about black people, that's not okay.
And then everyone's laughing. That's the worst.
But I don't think it's okay for black people to make fun of white people at all. Like, I don't think people should be making fun of people, I guess, in general. Unless you're a professional. And I really I don't like Saturday Night Live at all, the way that they show black people, because they just make it's like, oh, it's all about the hood and the ghetto and this, that, and the third, and it's like, but black, there's more to a black woman than this type of persona.
I have my stance because of when people make jokes towards me, it's usually within the first couple days or weeks of knowing me. You don't know me. You can't really make that decision about whether you think that that's a joke I'd be okay with or not, because you don't know who I am.
So my next question is, I've heard a lot of people say, rephrase the Black Lives Matter to all lives matter. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so
you can go. I need to make sure
I need to find my thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
Is that okay to ask?
Oh, no, that's an
great
amazing question.
Okay.
Great question.
I love it.
There's just so many thoughts on the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, for me personally, all lives matter is rude. And I think that it's, again, taking the whole, like, I think one thing I saw was, like, someone has breast cancer and you're at a breast cancer walk and someone runs up with a sign that's like, prostate cancer matters. Like, all cancers are a problem. People are dying. But we're focused on this one right now.
Right.
And you shouldn't take attention away from that. Because, again, I feel like it's belittling the problem, saying it's not actually there.
I agree. I think, all lives matter.
Right.
Like, that's not a question.
It's common sense.
But I think, like I was saying before, when you don't take your filter off, you're thinking, oh, well, how dare you say that just Black lives matter when all lives matter? And it's like, well, no, just take your filter off for 5 minutes and realize that there's a problem within the Black community. So rather than fighting against us and saying all lives matter, how dare you just say Black lives matter, be like, yeah, Black lives do matter, and realize that there's a problem. You have to realize that there are Black lives, that those Black lives are not being valued, that they're being killed and treated poorly and all that stuff, which makes you feel very uncomfortable if you don't know what that feels like. It's okay to have those uncomfortable feelings, but rather than staying in that discomfort and trying to sift through those things, you just stamp in all lives matter on it and then you feel better.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So what do you think is really important for white girls to know? Like, what do you wish people knew? Or, like, questions you get, like, all the time, or things that you wish people understood. Things like that. Can you braid my hair?
No.
Please don't ask me that. Not only because my hair is very short and I don't even braid my own hair, but because this is a whole nother problem in itself, but cultural appropriation. But that might just be me personally, because I know there's a lot of people that don't have a problem with cultural appropriation.
Right.
Or even
Or see it
that
as
means.
a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Cultural appropriation is like when you take pieces of other cultures but don't acknowledge that it's from that culture.
Right.
Like, okay, so like white girls with cornrows are edgy, but Black girls with cornrows are ghetto. Like that, you can't do that.
Justin Timberlake sings R&B music, and he's considered like super cool and super, in or whatever, but
nobody listens to
no one actually
Neo
listens to the R&B station. They only put Justin Timberlake on the pop stations, or they don't put Black R&B artists on the pop stations.
Right.
They just keep them on the Black stations, but really he's taking R&B, which is originally a Black genre, and he's made it popular, but it's only because he's white. My thing that I can say, not just to white girls, but white people, when my hair is nicely done up, please don't touch it.
Oh, please. Please don't.
Can I give an example?
Yeah,
and
please
I apologize.
do. People,
oh my gosh, what did you do to your hair? It looks so nice. Oh my gosh.
people will literally do that.
Literally do that. Do you know how long it took me to get it this way? And it's like, wow, you just messed up my hair. And one, I'm not your property. You can't just go and touch me like that.
Yeah.
And two, be respectful of the fact that my hair is not like yours. It's not going to go back to what it was before because you just went and touched and went all over the place with it. And I don't do that to you. What makes you think that you can do that to me?
Even when they do touch your hair, which, again, uncalled for and rude, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so soft. What did you think it was gonna feel like? I'm sorry it's not a Brillo pad. Like, what did you think it was gonna feel like?
Well, yeah, hair is a very big thing in Black
it's very
culture,
big.
which is a completely different conversation.
True.
Okay, so is it bad that I'll often ask people, like, or just say to people, like, I really love your hair? Like, is that
No.
a bad thing?
No.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
phenomenal, and you should
Okay.
say that to everyone you meet that you love their hair. You should.
No, that is nice.
Okay.
It's just when you go into the probes, like, oh, well, your hair wasn't that long yesterday. Like, what happened? Or is that a weave or is that your real hair? It's like a sideways compliment. So it's like, oh, I like your hair, but also it's not your real hair. So it's like one of those things where it's like, because again, hair is a big, huge thing in Black culture. If you haven't seen Good Hair by Chris Rock, go look it up right now.
True.
It's a very good movie.
I'll have to go watch it. So my two big takeaways from this conversation were, number one, I need to have more conversations. I need to listen to more people's stories and learn. And yeah, I might never get it fully because I haven't experienced that kind of prejudice, but I can listen and I can start to understand a little bit and see what I can do to help and to make a difference in my world. And girls, like, as Christians especially, like, this is what God calls us to do. He calls us to stand up and speak out against injustice. This is not just an optional thing. Like, our calling is to stand up and speak out for people who are mistreated. And my second big takeaway from this conversation is how many times I have bias in my heart too. And I hate that because it's ugly and it's gross, but it's in all of us to some extent. And that doesn't mean it's racial bias, but there's always some kind of bias where we tend to think that people like us are better than people unlike us. I want to ask God to show me where that bias is in my heart so that I can repent of it, so that I can walk in a way that's honoring to God and loving to the people around me. So girls, thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this video. I know it may have been uncomfortable at times because it kind of breaks through our little boxes, but I think it's so important and it's totally what God has called us to as Christians. So thank you again, and I look forward to learning from you girls in your comments that you leave on this video. And thank you both so much for joining us. Have an amazing week, girls, and I'll see you next week on Tuesday. Love you. Bye.
I hope we were enlightening.
I think you were awesome.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this is the background team. Feel free to come on in if you'd like to and wave. Got some friends. And another on the floor who's hiding.
This guy.